Welcome back to Grow and Preserve. I'm Carter. I'm so glad you're here today. I am so happy to be back after my brief break for the holidays. So enjoyed spending time with friends and family, but I am ready to kick off 2025. So let's get going with the pantry challenge, my all-time favorite challenge every single year. I love doing this one. It's hosted by Jessica at Three Rivers Homestead. She is fantastic. You can go see how she does it. She has this absolutely nailed down, and she has her very specific goals. My goals this year are going to be different, and we're going to talk about them as we go through this week's meals. I'll talk about, some of the different things that I want to accomplish and ways that I really hope what I'm going to bring you this year is going to be super helpful to you. So let's just jump right in and get on with the first morning's breakfast. One of my favorite things to have for breakfast is an omelet. It's one of those catch-alls. You can use up any leftovers. You can pile in the protein. You can add some veggies. So we're going to start today with an omelet. One of my health goals, well, a couple of my health goals that will impact what you see from me this year in the pantry challenge is we are keto / low carb, and I continue to stick with that. That is a huge goal for me this year, to stick with that. Another thing I want to do is to increase my protein intake. We tend to only eat a couple meals a day, so getting protein into breakfast is a bit of a challenge for me, and you'll see, I struggle with it a bit. But one of the primary things I want to do is to make sure I get a good amount of protein in the morning, because I only have one more meal during the day to get some protein in. So on to today's omelet. I have lots of leftover kind of things in the fridge, both from our Christmas dinner and from a Christmas party. Our Christmas dinner was delayed a bit for a variety of reasons, so I'm still kind of working through leftovers with that. So a couple of things we're going to use today is what I call cowboy goat cheese. This is cowboy candy that I mix with goat cheese, and we had this for the holiday party, and we had it for Christmas Day, snacking, watching footballs, that kind of stuff. So another thing I have left over from the night that my daughter first got into town is crispy beef. She was the first one here, so we just had crispy beef tacos. She turned hers into a taco bowl. So I have some of the crispy beef left, so I'm going to use that in my omelet. But you could be using ham or Canadian bacon or maybe pulled pork or sausage or, whatever it is, or leave the meat out altogether. But again, it's a great opportunity for me to add some more protein. I'm going to use sweet peppers today. I tell you what, these have turned out to be one of my favorite things. I use the sliced freeze-dried sweet peppers primarily as snacking. They are so, I don't know, they're sweet and they're crunchy, and when you're on keto, you kind of miss sweet and crunchy. So those are tremendous. But these that I have that are in little dices, I didn't do a ton of these. I think I have another jar or two upstairs, but these are perfect for things like this. It's just so easy to grab a handful and throw them in. So these will be on my list for next year. More peppers freeze-dried altogether, because they couldn't be any more perfect than that. But particularly more in this dice size, it's easy for me to throw into an omelet. So I'm also going to add some cheese to this omelet, as I often do. So I have some leftover shredded pepper jack. I'm going to put that in David's, and I have some Monterey Jack for myself. So there's my breakfast. I don't know how it works in your house, but every day, say around sometime between 1 and 3, David sticks his head in my office and says, "Hey, what are you thinking about for dinner?" And every day I'm like, "I don't know, what do you want?" He says, "Well, what do we have?" And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, do you not watch the videos?" So I have, if you've missed it, I have my latest canning pantry tour. I'll link up above. I think it goes up there. I also have a recent freezer clean out and tour, so I'll link that one as well. But I have more than I can ever begin to spew out daily. Anyway, this is our little routine. Kind of drives us both absolutely nuts, right? So the way I solved this with my kids when they were younger was to create a family menu. So I thought, gosh, I wish I still had that menu. Well, thank you, Dropbox. I found my latest version of that menu. According to Dropbox, it was last saved in 2013. So it is not, it's not exactly the way we eat now, although interestingly enough, I was checking, there are several items on this menu that we still eat today. However, we have lowered the carbs, we've improved the oils that I use, we've improved the quality of the food that I use, I grow most of the veggies. You know, we have evolved from this, but just goes to show you kind of how consistent our tastes are over the years. So while having this old menu is a great place to start, it needs some serious updating for 2025 and the way we eat today. In this next couple of months, I want to make all of our favorite meals that are going on the menu. I also want to work really hard to find some new items that are going on the menu. So I hope that you will get great inspiration from that. Next up is turkey soup. As I mentioned, our Christmas dinner was delayed a little bit this year. A couple of folks were sick, a couple are flying in late because of work. So we didn't end up having Christmas dinner until after Christmas. So I am still, as I mentioned before, working through those leftovers. So we're going to have turkey soup tonight. Yesterday, I finished making all the broth and getting it canned, and I put up another 10 quarts of turkey broth this year. So I was really pleased with that. So I have a couple of quarts in the fridge, and we're going to work our way through those today. So I also have a little bit of extra gravy, and then of course I have all the meat that came off the bones that I used to make the bone broth. I'm just going to put together a very basic, very easy turkey soup. It was absolutely delicious. As I mentioned before, the first night my daughter was in town, she turned her crispy beef taco into a crispy beef taco bowl. So she used rice as her base. And I have a little bit of that leftover rice, so David is going to have some rice in his turkey soup. I'm incredibly jealous about that. Rice is one of my all-time favorite starches. But anyway, we're going to give that to David, and I'm gonna stick to my keto version of the turkey soup. But this was terrific. Also topped it with a little bit of fresh cilantro from the garden. This is another breakfast that we've been having pretty regularly because it is so darn easy. So we're going to have a grilled cheese with yogurt. We use this low to no carb bread from Hero Bread Company. I don't know exactly what they're called. But anyway, I will put a link below, and it does have a discount on your first order. But what I want to say about this bread is that it is the most bread like keto bread I've ever tried, and I've tried just about everything. It has the cleanest ingredients of any of the keto breads that really taste like bread. So that's important as well, of course. I have made so many keto breads over the years, and they just don't taste like a sandwich bread. And sometimes you just want a sandwich bread to make a, peanut butter and jelly or a grilled cheese. So I use this a lot. I keep it in the freezer. It is something you order, although now it's starting to be available in grocery stores. I do find some of the grocery store prices are really high. So it's not cheap as it is, but anyway, it has been terrific, and it's something that we will continue. If I took this bread away from David, he would absolutely have a heart attack right then and there. So a grilled cheese is super quick and easy. This is the goat cheese I always get from Azure. I buy it in big 5-pound blocks and just chop it up into manageable chunks like the size you would get from the grocery store. And I'm just going to fry this up like you would any other grilled cheese. Now, I will say that my bread is frozen, so my cheese doesn't melt this time, but that's all right. And then today I'm going to have cherry sauce on top of the yogurt, another delicious one. I think the cherry sauce is David's favorite. The peach sauce is my favorite. Let's talk for a second about the veggies I do have growing here between outside. As you may remember, I did what I'm calling an edible ground cover in some of my beds outside. I also finally got some greens started downstairs. We had had a radon issue. I had to wait until that was fully remediated, and that didn't happen until almost Christmas. So I have kind of a late start there, but I'll show you those as well. So this edible ground cover so far has been fantastic. Now we are about to go into this deep freeze polar vortex, whatever it is we're calling. I don't know if it's going to survive that. I think if we don't get too much snow, most of it will survive, but that remains to be seen. I'm going to do a big harvest today just to make sure that I at least get one more harvest in. So I have here a huge bowl of different salad greens, and I have down there arugula and mustard and kale. I have lettuce, I have cilantro, parsley, spinach. I think that's about it. So this bowl is a big mix of everything, except I did separate out the cilantro for the most part this time because I want to freeze dry a batch. I have a really good crop going of cilantro right now, so I want to get some of that into the freeze dryer in case I do lose everything out here. Now let's run into the basement real quickly. As I mentioned, radon remediation took significantly longer than I really thought it was going to. You know, the good news is it's working, and my meter is now reading that it's like 2 down here instead of nearly 11. So I'm really happy with that, but I do have a late start on this. So I have some microgreens going. I also discovered I have one of my packages, the seed has just called it quits. So I have a little bit of germination issue going on down here. So I have, shockingly enough, ordered some new seed. So I'll be getting going on that as soon as it arrives. But I do have a few things started down here, and that will add to our regular veggie consumption over the next couple of months. I also have down here, I don't think I ever showed you those, I have some peppers overwintering. These are peppers that I pulled out of last year's garden. I think I brought in 9 of them. One of them just died. It's just completely dead. I stripped off all the leaves from all of these. I expected them to just kind of go dormant, and then I would wake them up somehow next spring. Well, my goodness, these things never went to sleep. They started producing leaves immediately. Several of them are now producing peppers. You know, they get no attention. They barely get any water. They seem to be really happy with the light I have in here. You know, I don't know. I'm hoping that they don't burn themselves out by the time I got to plant them in the spring. But I do have these. They are not producing anything that is anywhere close to being edible in the next couple of months. There are some peppers, but they're really, really tiny peppers, and you know, who knows if they're really going to fully mature. The next meal we're going to have is short rib ragu and some of those salad greens that we just picked. So short rib ragu is a recipe that I filmed in 2024, so I'll put a link to that for you if you have not seen it. I do these in the 24-ounce jar, which is the perfect size for the 2 of us, but you can certainly do it in quarts, or you can do it in pints as well. It's a really nice upgrade from just regular spaghetti sauce, I think. I'm also going to try a brand new to me keto pasta. It's called pizza pasta. This will be the first time I'm trying it. You know what, as far as keto pasta goes, it was the closest I found to regular pasta. So that for us is a huge win. It is really a huge win. So I bought a bunch of different varieties of this. It's not the cheapest thing on the block by any stretch. Hopefully it will continue to go down as competitors get closer to this. But anyway, I'll put a link down below. So we're going to have just some spaghetti noodles tonight. I'm going to serve this with a salad, top it with a little pecorino romano, which I found at Costco. You know, unlike Parmesan, which is made from cows, pecorino romano is made from sheep's milk, and that is an A2 milk that I seem to be just fine with. So I am excited. I have this giant brick of Pecorino Romano that I need to get through, so I'll probably shred some of that up and stick it in the freezer. But this was dinner. It was terrific. We loved it. Definitely going into regular rotation. So one of the other health goals, I have health diet, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, for myself for continuing into 2025 is to eat more probiotic-rich foods, which, you know, typically speaking for me, that's going to be eat more fermented foods. So I have started fermenting my own yogurt, and I will be continuing with that. Now, that's going to require me to go buy some half and half to make the yogurt every week. So that's what I'll be doing. Let me show you how I make this yogurt. And I'm making probably 2 batches of this a week. So I do a batch every 3 or 4 days. I started this a few months ago on Dr. Davis's recipe, or with his recipe for Allulose yogurt. I thought Allulose just sounded like the be-all and end-all, so I wanted to try that. Well, what I didn't know was that Allulose is super high in histamine, so I could not breathe, I couldn't see, my throat hurt. It was crazy. I had this horrible, really horrible allergy attack, and finally figured out that it was the Allulose yogurt I was eating every morning. So I got rid of that and started researching more probiotics and kind of picked some, you know, there are millions of them, picked some that tend to be generally available that had benefits that met my needs. So I found one particular probiotic that really seemed to do a good job of that and did not have any Allulose in it, and none of the other probiotics in there were high histamine. So that's the one I've been using. It is kind of specific to me. I'll link it below if you want to see what I'm using. But if you want to get into making your own yogurt, find what works for you, what is going to give you the benefits that you want. So I originally started trying to make this with goat's milk, to make sure that I had the A2. I've been eating goat's milk yogurt from Azure, but goat's milk requires some additional thickeners. I don't know why. There is science to kind of explain that. I don't know what it is, but I didn't want to add any gelatin, didn't want to add any xanthan gum, and I thought, I had seen at Kroger, of all places, some A2 half and half, which is, Dr. Davis uses regular half and half to make his yogurt. So I thought, well, okay, let's try it. I do a really long ferment on this, and I thought, I haven't tried A2 cow's milk yet. I've only done sheep and goat. So I tried it. It worked. Made a great yogurt. Didn't make me sick, so that was fantastic. It's a total winner and a big game changer for me to be able to make my own and not rely on getting the goat's milk yogurt from Azure. So real quickly, we'll just make a new batch. I have 1 probiotic capsule. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of inulin fiber. Again, as I said, I'll link all this stuff down below if you want to see what I use. I'm also going to use 2 tablespoons of regular yogurt. Now, normally I would be using yogurt from my last batch and put it in here, but I do have some goat's milk yogurt that I am still working my way through because I like this new yogurt so much better, so I'm going to use some of that, as you would if you were just starting up. Now, technically, you don't have to add yogurt in this first batch, but you will have much greater separation of the curds and whey if you don't. By your second batch, you'll have yogurt to add, and it'll be just fine. But the other thing that this does for me is it gets regular yogurt cultures, which are not all in my probiotic, regular yogurt cultures into my yogurt, so that it is indeed technically yogurt. So once I've added the probiotic, the inulin fiber, I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of regular yogurt. I'm going to mix it really well and then add a little bit of half and half. You want to make sure that all of the lumps are out, everything is dissolved. Then we'll add the remainder of the quart and mix it well. I bought a yogurt maker. You don't have to have a yogurt maker. You can use your dehydrator if you have something like an Excalibur where all the trays come out and you have plenty of room to stand up some jars. You can do that. You can use a sous vide. You can use your Instant Pot if you have one that is much newer than mine and has a way to program the time and the specific temperature. So not just the yogurt function. You can certainly make yogurt that way, but to make it the way I'm doing with the extended fermenting time, it requires, I use 32 hours, but 32 to 36 hours and a temperature of 99 degrees. So if you have an Instant Pot that can do that, a lot of people use that. It's just fine. I understand you can even possibly leave the light on in your oven and put it in there. However, my house is so cold, I don't think my oven would ever reach 99 degrees, give or take. So anyway, so I bought this yogurt maker and I love it. It's super easy. Again, I'll link it down below, but it comes with one set of bowls or jars, and then I bought a second set so I can keep this going and not have any days without my yogurt. Next up is another breakfast. We're going to use the Hero bread again. I'm going to make some French toast and sausage. You may remember, was it November, early December, sometime like that, when I was doing my freezer clean out, I made a whole bunch of sausage for, well, just to have, stuck it in the freezer. Was going to use a bunch of it at Christmas. I forgot. I completely forgot about it at Christmas. But we've been using it and absolutely love having it around. So I'm going to pull out some sausage and we're going to have some French toast, a little keto syrup going on, and then the yogurt. So this is quick and easy. You all know how to make French toast, so I won't belabor this one. This is one of our favorite breakfasts. It was a huge breakfast, I will tell you. We were hard pressed to get hungry for dinner that night, but it was terrific. David did a bunch of yard work all day. I did a bunch of stuff around the house. So this is a winner. It definitely stays on our regular rotation. Next up is a new recipe I'm trying, and by recipe, I mean kind of a list of suggestions of things to put together, because I don't obviously follow it closely because I want to use foods that I already have. I want to, it's a pantry challenge, right? So this one is called Chicken Tinga Tacos. It is from a cookbook called Half Baked Harvest, super simple. So it calls for feta. I'm going to use Monterey Jack instead, so I'm going to shred up some of that. It also calls for fresh chicken to be cooked and then shredded. Well, I have raw packed chicken, of course, which is essentially shredded chicken when you open the jar. So I want you to look at this jar. The date on that is 2020. It was not, that's 5 years old now, or pushing 5 years old, I guess. That did not come out of my pantry downstairs. I found this, I mentioned that I was on kind of a cleaning, purging rampage after the holidays, just get rid of stuff. Well, there is a closet in my office that is behind the door to my office, and my door is almost always open, and it's kind of around the corner from my desk. So I never see this closet. I just forget it's there. It is pretty much a useless closet. It's about 10 inches deep, and while there's a pole in it, a coat hanger does not fit in this closet. So when we moved in, I thought, well, I'll just put all my scrapbooking stuff that I was going to have all this time to do now that we had moved and I was retired, and yeah, I have yet to do any of that. But anyway, so I was just having stuff put in that closet, and somehow a case of jars got put in that closet, and when I was trying to purge the house, I opened the closet and there's a case of jars and it's chicken from 2020, and I thought, oh no. So I'm going to try to work through all that chicken from 2020. I don't know whether I'll get through all these jars of it during the pantry challenge, but that's certainly the chicken I'll be using this year. So we also have enchilada sauce. I made this a couple of times in 2024, so I'll link that video up above. And then it, calls for making a fresh pineapple salsa. Well, I have a canned pineapple salsa that we need to get through. I did not eat as much of this past year because I was really hardcore keto this past year. So I have, I think, 3 jars left on my shelf. I'm going to open one of those. You'll see that pineapple in particular is one I recommend not doing more than 12 to 18 months worth of a supply, because it does not hold its color much longer than that. So this one is 2 years old, and you'll see it's not the bright, vibrant yellow that it was, a year ago. I also don't have any fresh avocados, which is what it calls for, so I'm going to use these guacamole cups. I'm not a huge fan of these. David really likes them, but I'm not a huge fan of these. And then, of course, I always have low-carb tortillas in the freezer. As I mentioned, I generally prefer the Hero brand because they're cleaner. However, they've dropped from 8 tortillas in a bag to 6 tortillas in a bag. And at the price they charge for those tortillas, that's just too much. My husband just walks by and eats them indiscriminately, and he may go through another couple a day outside of what I serve in a meal. So I am just using these Mission tortillas that I get at Costco, and they taste great. The ingredients are not quite as clean as I'd like them to be, but they're good and they are relatively inexpensive. And then I'm going to top everything with freeze-dried cilantro that came out of the garden. Or neither of us was particularly excited about this one. It was just, it was dinner and it got the job done. So here it is next to the cookbook. This was fun. It was different. I don't think this one's going to go in our regular rotation. Next up, we're going to use some of those salad greens that we pulled out of the garden. We're going to make a Cobb salad tonight. So the first thing I want to do is make some hard-boiled eggs so that they have a chance to chill before it comes time to serve the salad. So this is how I make my hard-boiled eggs. Tell me how you make yours if you have a way that you particularly love. I love this way because every single time I get the perfect egg. It peels beautifully. I don't have any nicks, bumps, big old hunks ripped out of it. I don't get the gray ring around the yolk. Anyway, I particularly like this, so I just put it in to steam for 11 minutes. And then I drop it into ice water, let it cool until I'm ready to use it. As I said, I just get a perfect peel. So let me know how you do it down below, and maybe we'll help some folks out. So this is one of the reasons I love having bacon on the shelf. If you're new here, this is not a tested method for preserving bacon. This is what I do. There are plenty of folks who do it, but if you're looking for a USDA approved way to can bacon, there is none. So I just am going to pull this out and pop it in the air fryer, and my default temperature on the air fryer is 355 degrees. I'm going to do it for 5 minutes, and it comes out just perfect every time. So another thing I'm going to do, David laughed at me for this one because this one is quite time consuming, but I just love it. Normally I would make crispy shallots, and I love those. Well, I don't have any shallots, but I have onions, so I did the onions this time. They took a little bit longer to do one because I had so many more, because an onion is larger than a shallot, right? But the other thing is, I think the onions, they have more liquid in them than the shallots, so it takes them a while before they really start to turn brown and get crispy. But anyway, to me, so worth doing if you have plenty of time to kill. So here are the salad greens from the garden. As I mentioned, we have mustard, arugula, kale, parsley, lettuce, a little bit of cilantro, spinach. This is a balsamic vinaigrette I made the other day when we had the side salad with the short rib ragu. All right, let's go back to the eggs. You can see how perfectly they peeled. And see, the cook on these is exactly what I like. So if you want harder boil on them, add an extra minute, maybe 2. If you want a softer, take away a few minutes. So this is, I don't know, I enjoy this. Let me know if you have a way that always works as well. The other thing I'm using tonight is a baked chicken breast that I preserved last fall. I had a great deal on chicken. I baked them up and then I parted them out and froze that so that I could do exactly this. When I wanted a piece of cold cooked chicken, this is fantastic to just pull out. All I have to do is defrost it and chop it up for the salad. So the other thing I'm going to use is some leftover goat feta that I had in the refrigerator. I'll add the crunchy bacon. I'll chop that up a bit. And then I mentioned in one of my videos that I've enjoyed using the freeze-dried tomatoes as croutons for my salad. You know, who knew? I'm not usually a tomato in a salad kind of girl. I like tomato just about every other way, but not necessarily in a salad. But as a tomato crouton, it works quite well in a salad. So I'm going to add some of those, and then I'm going to top everything off with the crispy onions on top. Cobb salad is one of those things that was on my 2013 menu, and we continue to love today. So this will absolutely be staying on the menu for 2025. Okay, next up on the menu falls a little short on my goal to add more protein to my breakfast, but still this is a delicious breakfast that we will continue to keep on the menu. So these are the bagels I have found, I guess last year, maybe the year before. Used to be something that you ordered and I would get an order every couple of months. We really like these bagels. They're not perfect, like, you know, normal person bagels, but they're pretty darn close. They're much closer than some of the other versions we have tried. So they're now no longer available for delivery, but you can get them at a couple of different grocery stores at a better price, I would add. So they're usually found in the freezer section of a grocery store. So I keep mine in the freezer, and every now and then when I'm feeling rushed or lazy or just craving some, I don't know, some big hunk of bread thing, we'll have a bagel for breakfast. So I have to defrost it first. So while that's defrosting, let's take a look at the new batch of yogurt that we made the other night. So I pulled it out last night from the yogurt maker, stuck it in the fridge. You can see how thick it is, how there's very little separation of the curds and whey. It just comes out perfect every single time. So now that the bagel is defrosted, I'm going to throw that in the air fryer, which also has a toast function on mine. And I'm going to toast that up, and then I'm going to add some goat cheese and that leftover bacon from our salad last night, and just make basically a bagel sandwich. You know, not a whole lot of protein in there, but it sure is good. Another thing I want to accomplish during the pantry challenge is to cycle through a bunch of keto baking items that I keep in my kitchen pantry. So we're going to start doing a bit of that as well. First thing I'm going to make, I'm calling low carb coffee cake muffins. This is from a fabulous book by Michelle Rosen. It's called Paleo Baking. If you have done anything in the paleo world at all, you'll know Michelle Rosen as Paleo Running Mama. Anyway, she has some terrific recipes. I made this one for the first time over Christmas when all the kids were here. It was a huge hit. So I'm going to try to make it in muffin or cupcake form so that I can freeze most of it, because now it's down to just the two of us. And if this coffee cake is in the refrigerator, it will still be gone in no time flat. So I'm trying not to get the calorie overload, but keep all the really good things. And this is definitely going to be something that gets added to our list of items for the menu. So I don't know whether I'll put it under breakfast or snack or sweets or whatever, but it will be on the menu for sure. So I will put my modifications to this down below. Hers is not keto, hers is paleo. Mine, because I'm using Allulose, is not going to be paleo, but it is going to be keto, and you know how that goes. So anyway, I'll put it down below exactly as I'm doing it, just in case you have any interest. So this is a new book for me. I bought myself a few books for my birthday, and I've made 2 recipes out of this book so far. Both have been fantastic. We're going to do some more over the next couple of months and see if I can bump up my desserty, snacky, sweet, fun things kind of part of the menu. So I'm going to run through this really quickly, but as I mentioned, I'm going to put the recipe as I'm doing it down below. So there's several pieces to this, and to, I guess, most normal coffee cakes. It's been so long since I've had coffee cake. But she has one piece I'm going to leave off entirely. That's the icing. I don't need icing at all. So I'm going to start with the cinnamon sugar. This is quick and easy to mix up. I use allulose and cinnamon. I'm going to set that aside. And then on to the streusel topping, which is almond flour, cinnamon, salt, allulose. I'm going to add some chopped pecans this time. Those are not in the recipe, but last time we had it, I thought that would be really tasty with it. And then coconut oil is what the recipe calls for. You could use butter if you'd rather. Mix that all together and move it to the fridge to set up. Now, moving on to the batter, we'll do it in 2 pieces, the liquid portion and the dry ingredients piece. So we'll do the liquid first, which is going to be eggs, melted coconut oil, full-fat coconut milk, vanilla, lemon juice, which is what we're going to need to combine with the baking soda later to help with the leavening process. She calls for coconut sugar to go in here. I'm going to use, she calls for maple sugar to go in here. I'm going to use maple-flavored stevia. I'm also going to use allulose instead of the coconut sugar she calls for. Mix this up really well. So onto the dry ingredients, and yes, I realize that allulose is a dry ingredient, but she had the coconut sugar in her wet ingredient mixture. So that's the way I did it too. So dry ingredients are almond flour. She calls for arrowroot or tapioca. I used arrowroot in the coffee cake version. I'm going to use a keto baking mix. That is another one of those things in my pantry that I want to cycle through. I think it is Victoria's Keto Kitchen. Victoria's, I don't know, whatever her, I'll try to put a link to her channel down below if you have an interest in keto. She does all things keto, kind of baking related. So anyway, I'm working through that. I use that today in place of the arrowroot. I could taste absolutely no difference. I'm also using allulose, cinnamon, baking soda, salt. Get all this mixed up, combine it with the liquids, and then I'm going to put this in lined cupcake tins. So you want to put a little dollop in each. I probably started with too much to begin with, but that's the way it worked out. Sprinkle that cinnamon sugar on top of everything, top of the remainder batter. So now we're going to pull that streusel that we put in the fridge to firm up a bit. We're going to break it up with a fork a little bit and top each muffin with it. I ended up with more than I really needed for the cupcakes. It was the right amount for the coffee cake, but a little more. So I'll use that on something else. And then we're going to bake these at 350 for 23 to 25 minutes. These are a big hit with us, and I will continue to make these. I put, let's see, David and I shared this one, and then I put several in the freezer, and I have a couple in the fridge that we'll eat over the next couple of days. All right, now let's get to last night's dinner, because this was super fun. This one was a winner for both of us. This one is going to go on our 2025 menu. I'm really excited about this one. As I think I mentioned earlier, one of my goals for my health and diet this year is to increase my vegetable intake, both in quantity and variety. I tend to eat what comes out of the garden, whatever it is I grow, which is fantastic. That's the way it should be. However, in January, February, as you saw, not much is coming out of my garden. So, I could go 2 months and not have anything but greens, and that just doesn't really suit with how I want my diet to be right now. So I want more variety and I want more quantity. So I did go ahead and do a run for fresh produce, and I actually got some more half and half for my yogurt this coming week as well. But that's all I got, and that was all I needed. So when we did the pantry tour, I think it was back in November, one of the things I noted there was that my ground beef, I was not moving through that as quickly as I used to. I used to use that to make my chili. I used to use that to make my tacos. I used to use that to make my spaghetti. And now I have different ways that I do all of those kind of items. And so I was really only using the ground beef really just for a crispy ground beef bowl. So I wanted to find some more ways to use that. And so I'm going to use it in this one tonight. I also want to add more mushrooms into my diet. I am not a mushroom fan, but they are so healthy, and I continue to read about how healthy they are, and David loves them. So I am gonna work to like some mushrooms. So I'm gonna take some baby bellas with this one and kind of mix them in with the ground beef and hope that that works out just fine. So we're gonna make beef lettuce wraps tonight. Now, I have always made lettuce wraps with ground chicken because, that's the way P.F. Chang's does it, right? So it's really good when I make it with ground chicken. However, it requires more forethought on my part because I keep the ground chicken in the freezer, so I have to take it out in time to defrost it, then I have to cook it. And anyway, it rarely happens anymore. It used to happen a lot, rarely happens anymore. So I thought, well, let's do it with beef this time. So I'm not going to use any real recipe. This is just kind of me throwing things in based on what I have. So I'm going to dice up some mushrooms. I'm going to dice up red pepper, which I got today at the store. I'm going to dice up some ginger, which was already in my fridge. And I'm going to get these sauteing first. And then I'm going to add a dollop of frozen garlic that I did, my goodness, I don't know, maybe August, maybe during the Every Bit Counts challenge. So one of the other things I bought, because as you can see from downstairs, I don't have any real full-size lettuce, even small full-size lettuce downstairs. So I bought some little gem lettuce at the grocery store. So I'm just going to use this as my lettuce wrap. I like the crunch, but I want it to be small enough, to really be manageable and not have soy sauce dripping down my arm. So I find that the little gem lettuce really works out perfectly for that. So I'm going to get this broken apart so I can get it washed up and ready to go. And I'm going to add the ground beef to the pan, toss in some green onions, and then we'll start adding some seasonings. I'm going to start with garlic chili paste. I put in a lot of garlic chili paste, but David was thrilled to death. He's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to need to add hot sauce, and I didn't. I'm like, yes, steam is coming out of my ears. But anyway, it was really quite good and very flavorful. Then I'm adding fish sauce, and I knew I had fish sauce out there, and I intended to add some, but in my head I was adding sesame oil. So I put in a little more fish sauce than I had intended. And if you have used fish sauce before, it is very salty. So I'll have to come back and fix that here as we get on down in the recipe. So I'm also going to add some real sesame oil. And then I'm going to add tamari. And this is one of the things that builds up in my pantry. For some reason, I always seem to think I'm out of tamari. Well, I have 3 bottles of tamari unopened in my pantry. So I'm going to start working through some of that. And then back in the old days, I would have used hoisin as my kind of sweet component for this. Well, hoisin is very high in carbs, so I don't use that anymore. I'm going to use the plum sauce that I made maybe a couple of years ago. It's really tasty. It is, because of the plums, higher in carbs than I have been eating, but it is still far better in terms of carbs than the hoisin sauce. So I'm going to use plum sauce. It worked out perfectly in this. So when I went to taste this, I'm like, oh, that is some salty stuff there. So first thing I had to do was to really cut the salt. And the best way I find to do that is to add vinegar. So I added some unseasoned rice vinegar, and that helps significantly. And then I want to balance out the remaining saltiness with a little more sweet. So I finished off the little jar of plum sauce, and then I added a little bit of coconut aminos, and it really ended up being a fantastic balance. There was so much flavor in this, and I think it's the beef can handle more of a flavor punch than I think the chicken can. And this really ended up being one of our favorite meals of the week. This one is absolutely going on the menu. All right, after all that, I'm starving, so let's make breakfast. I'm going to start with, this is the jar that my bacon came out of the other day. And as you can see, I hope you can see, there's a little bit of bacon grease down in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that in my pan. I'm going to have scrambled eggs today. And I don't know what I did with it. Let me find the peppers. Okay, I found the peppers. So I'm going to just use up some leftovers, add some peppers. I wanted a meat to go in this. I don't have any leftover meats hanging out in the fridge. I do have a jar of ham up here. Someone had asked me about the differences. Sometimes you get kind of a brown ham. Sometimes you get kind of a pink ham when you go to can it. Again, if you're new here, it's not an approved thing. But anyway, it is something that I do. This is the one that turns out kind of brown. I will go over that maybe in the next video. I'll kind of show you the differences and explain why I like the one I like. I would go get it now, except it is snowing outside, so I don't want to run down to the pantry in my slippers just to get a can of ham that I'm not going to eat. But anyway, here we go. I'm going to put some ham in first. I like that to go in first and kind of crisp up. I'm going to put it away from the oil because there is still some liquid on it. Let that burn off first. So I have just scrambled up a couple of eggs here. I have these leftover crispy onions, which are no longer crispy, but they are going to be delicious in my eggs here. And the cheese I mentioned, and the peppers. This is my second or third little jar of peppers I'm going through. And I had forgotten that this one was in there. And I have a quart version that I'm opening as well. So I really want to get through these. I could reseal them, but I'm just going to eat them instead. All right, so I'm going to break up my ham. If you like collard greens, like with fat back in it, whatever, and you love that real crispy, smoky, really strong kind of ham taste, that is exactly what this tastes like. And I like that a lot. I grew up eating collard greens, and this is just, I just love it. All right, so I'm going to get some eggs in here. Let that set up for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and throw the rest of this stuff in here because, as I mentioned, these are scrambled, not an omelet. Oh, those onions. I'm going to get some peppers in. Out a little protector here. I'm just using a desiccant in here once I've opened them. Start off with oxygen absorber. I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to be doing, quite frankly. So if you have any insight into that, let me know. But I know that, you know, if I were just to keep the oxygen absorber in there, it would be too exposed to oxygen every time I open it. Okay, let's get this bigger spatula that I wanted. All right, while that is setting up, I'm going to get some yogurt set up. I pulled out a coffee cake muffin. Here's my little muffin. All right, so get some yogurt going here. I don't know if you can see down here, but you saw me do this the other day. can see that there, you can't see anything right now, but you can see there is a little bit of whey separation. That's fine. That's really as bad as it will get over the next few days it takes me to eat this. And my commercial yogurt does that as well. And some peach sauce for my yogurt. This peach sauce, cherry sauce, all the sauces, I'll definitely be making more of in 2025. I absolutely love having this for my yogurt. And I think in my next round of kombucha, I want to remember to use it there as well. I think that'll be fantastic. All right, this is almost done. All right, here's breakfast. So I'm gonna go eat my breakfast, clean up my mess, and then I think I'm gonna push tonight's dinner to next week's video so I can go ahead and get this one edited so I can get it up to you on time. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. I hope it will continue to be helpful. If you have some ideas you want me to try, whatever, please let me know. Thank you so much for being here. Like, subscribe, all that kind of great stuff really helps out the channel. I will see you next week. Enjoy.